Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Neiman from ACV Auctions. I'm joined by my friend Eugene Gorin from Indy Auto Man, or the Indy Auto Man. Eugene's got a really impressive operation here in the city of Indianapolis. We'll let him introduce himself, and I think maybe a right place to start is just for him to tell us about his business and kind of the size of the operation, because it's something you really gotta witness to see what they got going on here.
My name is Eugene. My business partner and I, we started this dealership back in 2008. We started with about 2 cars. We've currently got 300 on the lot, and we sell roughly 150 per month. A lot of the volume that we did has been driven from internet sales. You know, the internet's picked up, people are shopping online, and we've targeted our audience based on their buying habits.
Awesome. So you're in a dealership that was, a former Chrysler store? I mean, this place is big. You've got service, F&I, this is a full...
We were really lucky when we were actually looking for places to move to. This place was on the market for almost 8 years.
Wow.
And nobody had touched it. And we got lucky that our realtor was able to figure out who owned it, and we were able to buy it straight from an auction.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and I mean, if you saw it today, and I mean, check out their website, but this is an impressive operation, and they got beautiful cars here and a great, huge team of people, working it, and it's just really neat to see, and especially for a really young guy. And I think I've been out to visit Eugene more than a handful of times now, and I think secretly it's almost like a little bit of an envy thing. No, I'm serious. When I had my dealership and we were about the same, kind of point in our career, late 20s, I was doing 40, 50 cars a month. I mean, and I was proud of that. And we had taken over a former Chevy dealership. Mm-hmm. And so we were on our trajectory. And then my trajectory changed, and I kind of went down the auction path with ACV, which, there's no turning back, and I'm happy I made that. But it's amazing to see what you and your business partner and your whole team have accomplished here, because this is unique. I mean, if you don't give yourself enough credit for that, you got to give yourself a lot of credit, especially to do it without a franchise. Mm-hmm. Because it's, when I think about the used car, what was always so hard for me, and I loved it, but in a used car dealership, these cars don't just show up at your doorstep. They don't just unload off of trucks because you order them off of a sheet. I mean, your whole business relies on your ability to source inventory and the wins and losses and, your networking capabilities, and just there's a lot to it.
Yeah. It's been a lot to learn, especially I came from the engineering background. I was in college when we got started. My business partner was doing his MBA. He was actually going to go work for Google. I wanted to be a doctor, and we started selling cars. And we're like, man, this is way more fun.
And lucrative if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. If you know what you're doing, you can make some money. If you don't, you can lose a lot of money.
Yeah. Had those days.
Yeah, we still have those days.
Sure, right. So you got started really doing this in your 20s.
So I actually started when I was 15.
Okay.
I didn't have a driver's license. Good thing Victor did.
Okay.
So he'd drive me to the auctions. We'd buy some cars, and we'd always have to show them at our houses. And our parents, they hated it.
Yep.
So when I was 16, my dad told me, he's like, if you sell one more car to my house, I'm kicking you out.
Yeah.
Well, we had an old Mazda 3 that had to sell. And the only place that I could sell it was at my house. And so I tried doing it while my dad was at work. But it was it was one of those situations where he got home early, and he walks in, and there's a family of 15 sitting at the kitchen table.
With cash, probably.
With cash,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep,
So
been there.
That conversation went south pretty quick. Got kicked out. And from there, we just started buying and selling.
Yeah. No, it's an unbelievable story, and it resonates. I don't think there's too many people that started from those humble beginnings, meaning that there's a lot of people that get into the car business, start working as a salesman at a Ford dealership or something, but your story's different. My story was a little different, and I think it resonates because you and I have both been on some pretty interesting paths since being 15 and buying and selling our first couple of cars, because I did the same thing. I bought my first car when I was 15. It was an 88 Honda Civic.
Mine was an 04 Accord.
So, yeah, I mean, you got to start somewhere. So, so cool. So, Indy Auto Man, you got 280-something cars on the ground right now.
Yeah, I mean, we probably have between 260 to 270 on the ground.
Okay.
And that's because we have 40 to 15 transit at any point in time.
So 300 plus total inventory. Your inventory turn looks like?
We do, I mean, our average is 43 days in stock, and I mean, we're selling about half of our inventory. So, I mean, we turn about 6 times a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason I bring that up is just because you would be the envy of a lot of used car operations, right? And so clearly you're dialed in on how to run this thing, and your whole organization is too. And I appreciate you taking this opportunity to kind of maybe share. We don't have to give away all your trade secrets by any means, but
It's no secret.
well, and I'm a big believer in abundance, that there's enough out there for everybody,
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, when I think about ACV, and I know you're buying a lot of cars on there, and we're going to talk about that, the more success buyers can have on ACV, the more sellers are going to start putting their cars on ACV. It's kind of like a perfect storm, or it
Sure.
gets some momentum,
Sure.
or it has gravity behind it. Kind of these big grandiose theories around it. But I don't believe that ACV is limited to only selling 10 or 11,000 cars a month. I mean, I can see the day, and hopefully I'm confident it'll be in the near future that we're selling 100,000 cars a month, and that's not at capacity either. And so the more dealer principals and used car managers that can hear about how you do it, and you can help get them over the hump of getting comfortable
Sure,
with
sure.
with changing their process. I think that's just going to increase the demand on ACV, which will translate into increased supply, which will just move the whole marketplace into what I think you and I would both agree to be a better way to do business.
Yeah, I mean, online retailing is the simplest, easiest, fastest way to do this. We did, we did physical sales for years. I mean, since '08, we've been doing physical sales, and it wasn't until 2016 that we started to even dabble in, trade rev, ACV, online auctions, smart auction, stuff like that. They always had OVE, which was
Yep.
just, where dealers usually put their cars on to try to retail them to other dealers.
Yes.
And so I always had a really bad taste in my mouth from online, wholesale.
It wasn't real, right?
Yeah, it wasn't real at all.
Yeah.
And with online auctions, it was totally different. And I had my doubts and had my reservations because, my God, I don't want to wait for shipping. Like, it's coming from California. I don't have time for that.
Yep.
And oh my God, what am I going to do if the car gets here and it's got a bad motor? Where do I take it to? How do I fix it? What's the arbitration? But as we started doing it more and more and more, it just pretty much ironed itself out. We just put some really simple processes in place, some really easy criteria, and we just follow them, and it works every time.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So in today's Indy Auto Man reality, all your cars come from online? Most of them come from online? Like, what's kind of the breakdown?
We're probably 90% online, maybe 2 or 3% from wholesalers, and
Okay.
the rest would be trades.
And you probably get some decent trades.
Yeah, we do like the KBB stuff where
Yep.
people go appraise their car and bring it into you. That's not really huge for us, but it's just little by little we get cars in that way, and
Yep.
it helps keep the inventory up.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer that, at least when I was, a used car dealer, in order to grow the business and make better decisions on the kind of inventory that I was stocking, I just needed exposure to more cars. So, like, I had to go to more auctions. I started back in the day going to one auction a week.
That's actually a really good point, and that's something. That's actually the whole reason that we implemented a buying center.
Okay.
Is because I'm like, man, I really want to hit Manheim, Chicago, but Manheim, Cincinnati's got 3,000 cars running. What do we do?
Yep.
And you have to make a choice. You either go to Manheim, Chicago, and you have to buy 10 cars.
Because you're there.
Well, not only because you're there, but the next sale isn't for another week, and you have to have inventory.
Right.
Right? So it's like you're pretty much there, and you're shooting yourself in the leg because if there aren't any good deals, you still have to walk away with cars.
And that's exactly. You said it better than I could, but like, I started going to one sale a week. I probably went to one sale every 2 weeks, and I could, But then it's like, man, I need more cars. If you're able to sell them, you got to fill that pipeline. And then I was going to like 3 auctions a week, and you start going to 3 auctions a week, and you're the dealer principal, and you got I had at that point, like, between, call it 8 and 12 employees. It wasn't a big operation, but even that, I'm away half the week. What's going on back at the dealership?
Right.
What opportunities are we missing? What recon is taking place that I don't want to take place, or I do want more? Just all these decisions that need to be made in a small business are tough when you're the owner and you're not there. That was another big motivator for ACV. I just thought back on like my challenges of trying to source more cars and see more cars, and it's like, man, how could I get in front of more inventory, in a strategic way?
The problem with physical auctions too is you can't just be a good data guy. You have to pretty much be a GSM to go to those auctions and make decent decisions. You have to know what to look for. You have to know who to buy from. You have to know what cars have what issues. You have to know which sellers are going to purposely try to, take advantage of you.
Right.
And, with online auctions, you pretty much don't know who you're buying from unless it's a new car franchise. And at the sales, new car franchises would bring thousands more dollars because everyone trusted them.
Yeah.
Everyone knew, hey, it's a new car franchise, pay top dollar, we're fine.
Yeah, the assumption is there's no games with this car, right?
Exactly.
This is only here because it's a 130,000 mile Ford that came in at a Honda store. Still a good car, right? Whereas as soon as it becomes a wholesaler's car, a used car dealer's car, there's a lot of questions about why that car's there.
Exactly. And so you have to find a guy who's got a lot of experience, a lot of connects, obviously wants quite a bit of money.
You got to be able to trust him.
And then you have to take that guy that you're just investing, $100,000+ a year into, and then he's going to go buy cars.
Right. So you just give him the checkbook, say, hopefully you come back with some good trappings.
Right.
Yeah, the whole thing's crazy. And like the tribal knowledge, like, I mean, the amount of times I got, my butt handed to me at auctions. Fortunately, it was when I was in my teens, so like, you learn early.
Fast.
Right. You make your mistakes. Hopefully you survive them. I was fortunate too. But like, yeah, the tribal knowledge and who's somebody, to not trust and who can, and like, it's like all for what? Like, it shouldn't have to be that complicated. And I mean, I remember I would take friends of mine to the auctions occasionally, like once a month or something. Oh, I want a car. And like, they were blown away. They were visually uncomfortable. They were nervous. They couldn't believe that that's the world in which cars transact, and they're standing in the wrong places. They're afraid to make eye contact with an auctioneer. Like there's so
Don't
many
shrug.
Right. Don't do anything. Right. Don't blink. Yeah. So I guess I don't want to say we're getting ahead of ourselves, but you're leading right into basically. So you. In 2016, set up a buying center. Is that fair to say?
In 2016, we brought on a acquisition specialist, an acquisition manager, pretty much.
Okay.
And I was teaching him how to use the physical sales to acquire inventory. And it evolved into, hey, we're making a lot less money buying cars from the physical sale than we are buying from the online sale. Let's reorient ourselves and move to strictly online.
Yep.
When we did that, our time investment went down, transportation costs went down of getting to and from the sales, the amount of time that we could spend reconning our inventory, the amount of time that we could spend checking on the sales staff, checking on why didn't these vehicles sell, increased. So naturally our sales went up, we had to buy more. We knew that we couldn't go buy more at the physical sale because we'd be in the same bag we were in a few months ago. So we're like, okay, let's get another internet buyer. Let's get a guy specifically to buy on the internet.
Yeah.
He's going to sit in front of that computer. He's going to analyze the data of what's sold, what's selling, what's been sold, look at NADA, look at the comps, and based on that information, make a decision without anybody yelling in your ear, without having to worry about, I hope I check this car out and that there's no unforeseen body damage. I hope this thing, isn't being sold by ABC Motors, all that's gone. All you're doing is you're focusing in, you're dialing in, and you know exactly what you're buying. You know exactly what the damages are. You know exactly what your recon cost is going to be. And you do it with clicking a button instead of running from lane to lane to lane.
I mean, I watched your guys, so you got two of them over there full time. We'll talk more about, but it was like they were just cool as can be and having some casual conversation, talking amongst each other. Hey, what do you think about this one? And doing their, analysis of each car. But when I used to go to the auction, I mean, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was spent. Like, I just felt like I went through a war. And whether it's the carbon monoxide poisoning or just getting yelled at by auctioneers and being in that crowded, crazy environment and getting intimidated by people and like wanting to fight people, like the whole environment's nuts. And there these guys are bagging cars, and they're not even like, they're not phased.
There's no stress too, because these guys have a certain amount of money they can spend.
Yep.
And from my point of view, I go in, I check their buys every single day. I check it against the comps, and if I see a buy that's not done well, hey, no problem. Hey, here's a mistake you made. Make sure not to do it again.
Yep.
And we've dialed it into where I don't even have to check it other than once a week, once every 2 weeks. And these guys are driven by the performance of their cars selling.
Okay.
So we look at how much money they have to spend versus how much they've generated, which is their ROI.
Yep.
And then we base their pay based on their ROI. So they're incentivized to buy good deals, not just to acquire.
Right. Which makes a ton of sense. So there is some, you put some effort, let's say, at the very least, but not a crazy amount, but you put some effort into getting some metrics out there, tracking this stuff. But I mean, you're a big operation. You have a DMS, like you have the accounting capabilities that any new car franchise would have to report out on to track profitability per car and track that back to the person that bought the car and recon and all these expenses. My point is to say that nothing that you're doing here, another dealership couldn't take information from this conversation and within a month have hired somebody and implemented it and like got it up and off the ground.
One of my best friends actually owns a dealership 45 minutes, 50 minutes north of here. And he does the exact same thing that we do, but he's a 4-man crew. He's got 60, 70 cars in a lot, selling 30 to 35, and that's all he does.
That's nice. Yep.
When he's not talking to a customer selling a car, he's just on the internet buying deals.
Yep.
He doesn't have to go to the sales anymore. He doesn't have to worry about, crazy damages coming on cars that were not disclosed. It's all right there. And it's helped his business almost double.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And he started out with 20 cars in the lot.
Yep.
With like 75 grand from AFC.
Yeah.
And then because of his ability to use his time to generate business versus generate acquisitions, he was able to grow it quickly.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, when you free up the most valuable resource of a dealership, the guy who knows the most about the business, the owner of the business, and you can keep him or her at the dealership, you're going to sell more retail cars. Right. Everybody on the sales floor is going to work harder. It was the same thing when I was in my dealership. Calls, as much as these were salespeople, they were motivated by money too. It was their pay plan. They wouldn't call people back. I don't know why. It
doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense.
But that's probably something we're not going to change anytime soon, right? But my presence there and my following up and them knowing, and I wasn't like a drill sergeant, I don't think, but it helped. So the more time I could be there, the more productive we were. If I was 3 states away at an auction, the productivity on the retail side is going to tank.
And especially in any operation, it's accountability.
Yeah.
If you're there, just your presence keeps people more accountable.
Yep.
You're 3 states away, like you said. What's the accountability factor?
Right. 0. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you're an inspirational, motivational guy. I see the way you interact with your team. Like, they're not, they want you around, and you bring up the mood and the energy in the room anyway. So it's all good stuff. It's not because you're like leaning over their shoulder.
Right. Right. We have a very special thing that we do here. It's called a fire sale. They either sell it or they're fired.
Yeah. Exactly. So let's look at your buy center. So, what I've heard a lot in the past when I go into, XYZ Ford dealership in, Orlando, Florida. And we'll say, hey, you really should be buying, for your used car lot on ACV. And yeah, I just don't have time for it. Because, who we're talking to is usually that used car manager who their time, I think, is split. Sometimes they're absolutely swamped and sometimes it's a lot of dead time. But for them, I think they make a valid case that, hey, ACV with its spontaneous 20-minute auctions, maybe it's not ideal for them to sit there and have open all the time and, be buying cars. Now, I can argue with them, but that defeats the purpose. As soon as I'm arguing with them, we're shot. Versus,
Right.
the enterprise rep walks in with a spreadsheet, and this guy will go buy 6 base XLT Explorers off of a spreadsheet. And I don't know if he's actually getting a great deal. I don't even know if he does, but it's easy, so he just does it. And so where we've kind of run into a bit of a barrier with some of these big dealerships, that the ones that do take the leap, just like you, they love it, right? It's about finding and building a process in their organization. It's about saying, hire somebody, give them 2 screens, 2 big monitors, right? Just invest in them for 2 to 4 weeks and teach them how to do it, and let them go, and then follow up.
Yeah, and it really doesn't even take that long. We had our guy who's, killing it right now. I spent maybe 2 hours with him, maybe, and he came from a catering background. 19 years old, used to do catering for events and stuff. And when I interviewed him, I said, what do you know about cars? Well, I changed my alternator once.
Okay.
Sweet. 2 hours later, hey, how's it going? Man, I think I bought 2. It's oh, shit.
Right. What'd you buy?
Smoking hot deals.
Okay.
But it's just from having somebody who's there. It's like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Well,
yep.
Well, you can take 100% of the shots if you see every single car going.
Yes.
So having someone dedicated to just view that inventory constantly gives you such a leg up over everyone who's, trying to shove all their buying into 2 hours, into
right.
3 hours. You don't get that same quality of purchase by having to buy.
Yeah. No, I don't know this, right? I met your guys. They're hard workers. Are they both 19? They're 20 years old. They're
One's
young
19,
guys.
one's 20, yeah.
And, they're appraising these cars. The nice thing about them is they're fresh. They didn't come into this. I can tell by just talking to them. No bad habits. Right. So they're looking at your software, and they're doing competitive analysis on these cars. They're seeing what they can retail the car for and still be very competitive in the market. Backing into that recon, and they just have this nice, streamlined, systematic approach. Again, they're not stressed out of their minds. They're just hanging out, buying cars. They're happy.
We got a box of Cheetos back there. If you're hungry, grab a snack, buy some cars, hang out, buy some cars.
The alternative is, and I don't say this in a nasty way, I know these people, these are who I grew up with, but it's you're paying the crusty auction guy to go to the sale, and you're giving him a checkbook, right? And you don't really know what he's doing when he's there. And when he makes a mistake, he's going to have endless excuses. And
that's the worst part is the endless. You can make a bad buy, and there's 10,000 reasons why you made it, but none of them are your fault.
Exactly. Yep. And that guy's going to make a ton of money, and you're going to pay him a ton of money. You're going to pay him a ton of money that you know, and you're kind of going to roll your eyes and go, "This is my only option," right? And then you don't even know what you actually have to pay him versus what he's getting, piecemeal to him or whatever. And even if he's the most honest guy in the world, that worry alone has a cost.
Oh, yeah. He's out in your car, your plate, your checkbook, your inventory, your livelihood.
Yep.
And he's got what kind of a commitment to you?
Versus these guys who are in your office, 2 doors down from your office, right? You can go and check on them anytime. Everything's transparent. You can see what they're doing. You can evaluate the cars they're buying. And I'm just guessing here. I can't imagine you're paying these guys near what you would have to pay somebody.
Not even close.
Right.
Not even close.
They don't seem like they're upset by what they're making either. But they're nice young guys.
They're making 3, 4, 5 times more than what they were making. But
sure.
At the same time, for what they're generating, it makes so much sense.
So again, I spent time with these guys, and we'll include some footage probably in this of just showing them in action. But they're telling me that each one, right, is capable of buying 40 plus cars a month.
Oh yeah.
So average gross on a car, let's say, even at we can use totally rough numbers here.
Let's use $2,250.
I can't do that math. Let's use $2,000.
$2,000. I like that.
So if somebody's buying 40 cars a month, $2,000, they're generating $80,000 of profit really for the dealership. Fair to say?
The way that we calculate it is they're going to buy 40 cars a month, right?
Okay.
And they have an inventory of 80. And our turn ratio is 50%. So they're going to sell 40.
Okay.
So they're constantly replacing. So
that makes sense. Yep.
It's the same math,
Yep.
but they're constantly going to have an inventory of 80, sell 40.
And what are you making when you sell each one of those cars? Rough.
I mean, let's just say $2,000.
$2,000. So 40 cars in a month times $2,000 is $80,000 generated sales profit, right?
Right.
Now maybe out of that is your commissions and stuff, or maybe not. Maybe that's what the store really retains. Roughly, what are you paying to have one of these guys? Ballpark.
So each one of them has an ROI index.
Okay.
So if they're, and the way we calculate ROI is, let's say that they have $1 million to spend, right? And they generate $80,000. They have an ROI of 8%.
Got it.
Our goal is 8%.
Okay.
The top tier is 10% plus. If you're able to generate over 10% of what you have per month, you get paid a decent amount.
Yeah.
And so the way our pay plan works is you take, let's just say $200, right? If they hit the top tier, they get $200 per car sold. So they're not incentivized to buy as they are to buy cars that will sell.
That will sell, right.
You know, because if you pay them on production of cars purchased, shit's the end of the month. Let me click, you know.
Stockpile a lot with stuff you don't want.
Right.
Yep.
And so because they don't get a single dollar for acquiring a car, they only get paid if it sells.
Yep.
That makes them be very meticulous in what they purchase because they know if it sits and it loses money, not only is it going to lower my ROI, which is lowering my income, but it's also going to reduce my ability to reinvest that money into additional inventory.
Yeah. Makes all the sense in the world. I think your metrics are all perfectly aligned. I mean, who am I to say, but that seems very, very logical. But simply put, I mean, the ROI that each one of these young guys is producing for your store is huge.
To put it simply, they're generating more money off of the credit line that I've given them than I could. Hands down, 100%. I will go to them and ask them if a car's a good deal.
No, I saw you do it today.
Yeah, just because they know that inventory so well. I mean, they're watching it 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yep.
They know it. They know the comps. They could pretty much memorize the comps because we buy a lot of similar cars like Honda CRVs. We'll buy 20 of them. They know. Oh, shit. The guy down the street has one for $12,000. I need to make sure to buy this one cheaper.
Yep. Well, and this is part of the thing that I consider myself like a veteran. I know I'm 32, but I've just been in this. I've been in the trenches going to car auctions for 15 years, right? And when you do that, you're surrounded by other people. We all think we're geniuses. We all think we're the best car buyers. You know what I mean? We all have the tribal knowledge that no one else does. And you could never take so-and-so off the street and teach them to buy cars. The reality is you can. The reality is it's not that complicated. The reality is when you take all the BS out of it and all that, again, tribal knowledge, but that stuff you have to know who you can buy from, who's safe, what rules at this auction, what rules at that auction, and you just simplify it down to the cars. You plug these young guys in that kind of are analytical and like data, and they're going to look at they're each going to look at 1,000 cars today. 1-2 months in, and they do that every day. So it's not like going to the auction once a week. They're getting on board at 5 to 6 times faster because they're here 5 or 6 days a week, staring at cars in the weeds, figuring out which ones do what, as far as the money is. You can create brilliant level, buyers very, very quickly.
Yeah, you don't need anything special to buy cars. You have to be 3 things. You have to be patient, you have to be detail-oriented, and you have to be competitive. And the reason I say competitive is a lot of what we do, we compete against each other. And so if I'm buying cars, I'm competing against those guys. Who's going to generate the highest ROI this month?
Yeah.
Who's going to do it with the least amount invested? If, let's say, Mike can generate $50,000 off of $500,000, and Bill generates $100,000 off $600,000, that's the guy I'm going to try to be like. I'm going to look at his inventory and I'm going to say next month, I'm going to be the number one guy.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We compete to see who can generate the most from the least.
I love it.
Every single month. And it's awesome. It's a ton of fun. That's what I do for fun. So I'll compete against those guys. I'll buy cars just see if I can outperform them.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10 I can't.
Well, that means you did a great job creating a machine here. You engineered a really amazing thing. And that is feeding your whole operation, really. Those two young guys are sourcing the overwhelming majority of the inventory that your salespeople are dependent upon, that your F&I people are like. That's really pretty neat when you think about the two guys in the room on the second floor that nobody really sees, that are just they're at auction every day.
Yeah,
But
they're monsters.
They are, and they're nice. They're nice guys, and but you're right. They didn't come from this background, so they were fresh. And to me, that's the most intriguing thing about all this, because anytime you go into these other dealerships, you look at who does the buying, and it's the guy with the most scars who's been going to the auctions the longest, and he's really probably, in a lot of cases, the most disconnected from reality.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of guy who uses the old flip black book to appraise cars.
Yes. Yep. You hired a guy, put him in the seat, you trained him for, you said 2 hours. I'm sure it's been more than that, but
he had additional help from the other buyers that were in there. So, even when I'm not sitting there directly training him, he's watching what the other guys are buying. Hey, why'd you buy that? Oh, well, check it out. Here are the comps, here's the NADA, here's a black book, here's LMR, here's why I made this decision. Low market day supply, it's got a high chance of selling, it's a great color. The next cheapest comp is $200 higher, and you can buy this $3,000 back. My Recon's going to be $500. Bam, it's a $2,500 deal. Let me get it real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, the process is super easy.
Yeah, and then the cars just show up.
Yeah, I mean, it's one click of a button. The transportation's all done, so you don't have to call a shipper. You don't have to ask him where he's at. You don't have to hound him. Hey, why aren't my cars here?
Right.
They just show up, and if they're not, we just call you guys and
we fix it.
Yeah.
We know we're not perfect too, but sure. So that whole feedback loop, though, I think is paramount too, right? And I don't know if you had this in place day one, but my guess is you had a lot of it. Like you thought through how this was going to work. You didn't just throw a guy in a seat and say, go buy cars. Right?
Unfortunately, it's exactly what we did.
Okay.
And we got very lucky that I guess we made a lot of changes very quickly, but it was because of how involved we were.
Okay.
We didn't have this position. We didn't, say, oh, let's make a buying center. It's just like, hey, we need to buy more cars. I'm not sending anybody to the auction for the exact reasons we just talked about. I don't trust anybody to buy an auction.
Yeah.
I don't trust anybody with my checkbook. I don't trust anybody to go out there and just buy cars because of, you're such a good guy.
Yep.
But here, it's a much more controlled environment.
Yeah, you want to go put the brakes on it, you go over there and tell him to stop buying.
Yeah.
It's done. Versus at an auction, you try and call your buyer and he doesn't answer the phone.
Well, not only that, but they can't, not to say that anyone would, but they can't cheat you,
Yep.
The best way to prevent any sort of mistrust, any sort of theft, is just to eliminate any way that it could happen.
Yeah, right. Remove it from the equation altogether. So you didn't have all those controls in place. You started doing this. Maybe it's because you saw the productivity that was coming out of it, and you go, "Wow, we really got to sophisticate this a bit." Is that fair to say?
That's exactly what happened. We started doing it. We saw the potential. Like, oh shit, we're missing a lot of opportunity here. What are we gonna do? And we made a few quick changes. Set up, just the basic parameters in place that, I mean, anybody with half a brain could figure out.
Sure.
And then they just went to town.
Yeah, and from what they were telling me, and it's funny, the one guy was telling me about how when he started, this is your second buyer who's been here, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months?
Yeah, probably 3-4 months.
Okay. And he's totally comfortable. He's like just doing his thing. And it's neat to watch him roll through the process. Like they fly through all the pictures, right? They know exactly what they're looking for. They're in that description. They're copying the VIN. They're it's just like they've got it down to such a science.
Oh, yeah.
But he was saying how, and he was proud of himself, and rightly so. He's ventured into Kia Optimas and some different inventory than what you guys were ever stocking previously.
Yeah. And that's a really cool point to touch on too, because everyone has that bad luck car. It's like, oh man, I buy a car and it never is going to sell. It just sits there and it loses money every time. And that's how I felt about Kia Optimas. And I told him, like, guys, just don't buy that crap. Like, it never sells.
Yep.
The first 3 cars, he buys. Kia Optima. What's that Kia SUV? Kia Sorento.
Yep.
Yeah. And they made like triple what any of my cars had made that entire month.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at this kid and I'm like, what in the What's going on? You know?
Yeah.
And the same thing with our other guy. You know, he bought some cars I would have never touched. I would have told him not to buy those cars because of all the experience I had. You know? And they bought them, and they reconned them, and they made sure they were ready to go, and then they sold.
I love it. And I think, you know, speaking from experience, we, the experienced guys, the experienced car buyers, we can get in our own way. I mean, I bought cars, you know, a consistent car. Oh, this is a good seller. I'm known for these. I always do great, blah, blah, blah. Until you end up with 4 of them, and then you literally, you fulfilled the need in your market, and nobody's touching these things now. And you're like, what happened? Same with, you know, these Kia Optimas. Like, I would occasionally, and it took me a while, you know, venture into something different that, oh, you know, those are sleds. Those, nobody buys those. Sure enough, they're on fire. But I believe that this market is constantly shifting, constantly evolving, constantly changing. And to be successful, I think the only way to really be successful is to keep that inventory turn time down. And you got to constantly ride the wave of the market. And if that means, hey, you were doing really great with Ford truck product over the past couple months, it doesn't mean you're going to do great with that till the end of time.
Right.
So like watching those trends and not being as emotional, you know, I think it's, and to my own detriment, like the emotions get in your way. Those buyers that you have, those young guys, they're not emotional at all. They're excited about like what they're doing, but it's not the same kind of emotional like rush, you know, lunatic mentality that you see at the auction.
Yeah,
and boneheaded ego.
I'm gonna raise
stuff.
my hand, and that car's mine.
Right.
You know, I don't care what I pay for it.
Right. You get a little bit of that with ACV. You get some of it when you get caught in a bidding war, which I think is good. I think you said, you know, competition or being competitive is paramount. But they're not ignorant. You know what I mean?
They know their margins. You know, if anything else, they know their margins. They know, hey, I can pay up to this. And the one thing that they have got down to, I mean, a T, is when they reach that number, they walk away.
Yep.
And that is so important, so important for them to walk away, because that's as important as knowing when to go higher.
Yeah, no, I mean, the disciplined approach, and it's fascinating to see us, you know, old dogs getting taught new tricks by young people who are just simply, you know, they're armed with better tools. For me to go to the auction, I got to imagine half of my brain power is spent on defensive tactics at an auction, worrying about who I'm buying from, worrying about, am I missing something on this car, worrying about, you know, all these ridiculous variables that shouldn't matter, but do matter at the auction, versus if I could just be plugged in, eliminate all the BS variables, and just go do the work and buy the cars that make sense for my dealership, like, yeah, it'd be way more productive.
One thing that we both forgot is, you ever been at the sale and, you know, the price is going up and you're like, who the hell is bidding? And you're just looking around trying to find, is anybody else raising their hand, or is the auctioneer just jacking me? You know?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I lost more deals, you know, hunting around trying to see if somebody was actually raising the price than actually buying the cars.
Yep.
And if you weren't careful, not only did you get jacked by like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000,
sure,
but also sometimes you'd stop bidding and you'd lose the car.
Yeah, because there was somebody tucked behind the Coke machine, right? It's either the Coke machine or somebody hiding behind the Coke machine. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And who needs that crap is my point. Like, why is that considered a necessity of an auction? I don't think it is. And we don't have any of it. There's zero shill bidding on ACV. It doesn't exist. There really isn't a way to do it. I think our buyers know that. And we could show everybody who the bid history is on every auction, so we can eliminate any risk or concerns about that. But yeah, you're right. And then again, like, people aren't bidding with fear on ACV, and I think that's just healthy.
I think that's. I mean, every online auction eliminates a lot of that fear, because
Well, not simulcast though.
No, yeah, simulcast is not an online auction.
I agree.
Simulcast is a scam.
Yeah, so, you didn't have to say that, but I wouldn't disagree either. Right. All I know is I never bought on simulcast. I would be in lane and watching the auctioneers torture those poor simulcast bidders. I go, I'll never do that, because those guys are getting run up to no end. Like, it's like humorous when you're in the auction lane watching the auctioneer run a simulcast bidder up because they can only see this much of a simulcast lane. They can see a sliver.
So before we had the buyers, what my grand plan was I was going to have the entire wall, all TVs. And I said, this is going to be my buying room. And I'm going to sit there and I'm going to have Atlanta, and I'm going to have Chicago, and I'm going to have Pennsylvania, and I'm going to have 30 lanes running, and I'm going to buy every single good deal.
Yep.
Well, I tried it with 3 monitors, and it was such a cluster that not only did I not buy anything, but everything that I did buy, I ended up arbitrating, losing money on, or it was completely different than the way that I saw it.
Yep.
I mean, you're looking at a car, and I mean, you got 30 seconds.
If there's not a full CR and it's a green light car, you're completely screwed.
Yeah, and it was such a waste of time. I probably spent 10, 15, 20 hours on simulcast, and I said never again.
Yeah.
And that was one of the other reasons why I was so against online auctions. I'm like, if there's anything like simulcast, no.
Yeah. Yeah, and like my experience with OV, I always talk about this. If I could only have the thousands of hours that I wasted back in my life scrolling through OVE going, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to give it another chance. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's, there's no deals on there. There's nothing that's reasonable. If you're going to go on there, like the prices on there were above what I could get for these cars retail. Because right. One car I ever bought on OVE only because it was an employee of mine who had to have it and he wanted it. So it literally was a retail deal. And like the answer is I bought 0 cars basically for my business. I bought 1 in thousands of cars that I've ever bought. It's a joke.
I actually thought that OVE was awesome. And so I bet the buyers, I'm like, hey, listen, I know you can buy cars on OVE. Don't be a little girl about it. You know, go and put a little bit of effort into it. And they're like, Gene, like we can't buy anything. I promise. I said, guys, I'll bet you $100 that in 1 hour I'll have a smoking hot deal. I lost $100 that day.
Yeah, there's nothing there. The only stuff that's actually like priced aggressively, salvage title. I mean, just like squirrely cars from sketchy dealers, like the stuff you wouldn't ever touch. That's the only stuff that's priced fair. Yeah, and I think ACV, gets a bad. I don't say we get a bad rap. We get when people hear online auction, their mind immediately goes to OVE and the total waste of time that is. And simulcast and the trap that is. I mean, I know there's dealers that if you're a new car dealership and you're buying off lease inventory, simulcast, whatever, it's fine. I know guys have success doing that.
Same car.
They're commodities, right? 10,000, 20,000 mile cars with full CRs. But as soon as you start getting into true used cars where everyone's a little different, I mean, what's your inventory mix?
1 or 2 of everything. I mean, we've got everything from Chevy Sonic to a Lamborghini. We don't make money on the Lamborghinis. We do on the Chevy Sonics. Right. But, the nice thing is you have variety, you have access, and you obviously have the ability to buy with almost 0 constraints. Aside from the shipping piece of it, which really isn't all that big of a deal, there's really not too much of a downside to it.
Yeah, I mean, and we're getting better in the meantime. Our condition reports I think they're great. I mean, those guys were raving about them, and I was asking them to be critical and tell me what we could be doing differently. They didn't really have much. But we're continuing on that quest to make that better and better. And, the nice thing that I saw, and I experience this when I go on ACV, is the consistency. The photos are all the same. So right where everything is. Nothing's hidden, right?
Right.
You look at the CRs, the condition reports, you know right where to find stuff. Every car, we're checking the oil. Every car, we're checking the paint meter. On every car, we're going through it. And, 10 undercarriage photos. We started this thing in Buffalo, New York. Undercarriage rust and rot is a major, major red flag, and it'll make or break a car.
It's funny you say that because when I was first experimenting and we brought our acquisitions manager on board, and I'm like, okay, so here's how we check out each car. And I was like, you check out this panel, and then this panel, and this. And so I kind of created that condition report every single car, and it was impossible to do.
We spend 20 minutes a car. You can't do that at the physical auction. You're not going to do that.
No. And then plus appraise it, and then go watch it run, and do that on the 3,000 other cars that are running. That's why we had so many bad buys.
Yeah. Well, the game is kind of rigged. When I used to go to physical auctions, when I was 15, 16, 17 going to physical auctions, into my early 20s, but we're going back 05, 06, 07, 08. it was a bit more of a free-for-all at an auction. Meaning, like, we used to stand right in front of the cars when the drivers were trying to drive them through. We'd pop the hood. We didn't ask them to. We'd reach in. We'd pop the hood. We'd take the oil cap off and look to see if there was milky substance underneath it, if it was a head gasket car or not. Like, we did whatever we wanted to. We ran the show. And the auction simply won't let you do that stuff. The driver door's locked now. You can't plug a scan tool in. They won't let you pop the hood. They won't rev the car. You can't look underneath. You can't get down on your hands and knees and look under the car. Like all these safety restraints, which are done for the right reasons, right? Their motive is pure. They don't want people getting run over and killed at auctions. I get it. I didn't want to either. But at the end of the day, if I can't gain that information on a car in the 30 seconds when I'm supposed to appraise it and understand what is this $10,000 asset that I'm trying to buy here, I'm going in blind. So like a lot of our philosophy is around just going back to what we used to be able to do at the car auction that they won't let us do anymore. And that just plays in our favor. I mean, as the auctions keep tightening up the safety stuff, and just wait until they put the delineated barriers down the auctions, because they're going to do it so that the cars can't veer out of a lane. I'm sure they're going to do it. As soon as you can't touch the car, forget about it. Like, why even go? And that was a unique transition point that we've had even in the short 3.5 years that ACV's been a thing. Is we've gone from hearing from buyers, I gotta touch and feel the car. I just gotta touch and feel it. To then, I mean, you laugh.
Well, no, I laugh because that's exactly what I told your rep when he came in. I said, I don't want to do this because I need to touch it, I need to feel it, and I need to smell it.
Yep.
And then like 1 year later, I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah. And now buying 100-something cars a month from us. But yeah, now we get told. I mean, we get told every day from our buyers. And again, I know we're not perfect, but we get told every day. The description on your car, it's better than touching and feeling the car in person at an auction. It's pretty humbling. That makes me feel like we're accomplishing our mission.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of items that I would miss touching and feeling a car, I mean, blow my mind.
Yeah.
I'd buy this car and I think this is a solid deal. I mean, I go in to drive it after the sale and I'm like suffocating from how bad it smells.
Yep.
And this is a car I touched and I smelled and I felt.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories is one of the buyers and I, we were joking around and he's like, man, I stole this Lexus. Like I robbed this thing. And he shows me, his comparison, his market analysis. I'm like, man, there's no way. Like, who would sell you that car for that much? I mean, it was just like a steal. And like, it pulls in, transporter drops it off and, it's pulling into the lot. Like, man, that thing is gorgeous. Like, damn. And then, like, I walk around it, and the whole passenger side is just gone.
Yep.
Like, both doors just smashed in.
You didn't get around the car.
No.
Yep.
And the crazy thing is, too, if I would have seen that car in lane, I would have done the exact same thing.
Yeah, I've run up on cars and only seen half of them, for sure. For sure. Or I don't think I've ever bought one from this situation, but you're bidding on the wrong car. You think you're bidding on the one that's on the block, and they're actually finishing the auction up on
guy.
the.
This guy right here.
So again, like for all those multitude of reasons, which I feel like that's a lot of that stuff, a lot of that shenanigans. It's like intrinsic to the car auction world. It's like a rite of passage. You have to get screwed and survive it enough times to be in the brotherhood. And it's like, for what? You can have two 19, 20-year-old guys here who are chill, cool dudes, hanging out, drinking some Red Bull, listening to music, buying cars in an intentional way without being bullied, without being like frazzled. And they're buying 100+ cars a month, and you're paying them meaningfully less than what you would have to pay, some auction guy to go and do it. You've got way more controls in place, way more oversight if you want it, the ability to adjust strategy on the fly. You stay in the dealership all day, every day where you need to be to drive the ship in the right direction. Is there any downside? I mean, is there any desire for you to like have a little bit of presence at an auction or like do some simulcast?
I thought I did. And then we looked at our numbers and we were averaging 20% more profit on our online purchases than we were the auction. And a lot of that came down to recon and the auction fees. Like,
okay.
You buy a $20,000 car at Odessa, you're $450 in an auction fee.
Right.
Buy a $20,000 car at Manheim, you're $500 in an auction fee. You know.
Yep.
And then you PSI it because you never buy a car without a PSI. There's another $150. Then you transport it. So before you even pack the car, you're $800 in fees.
Yeah. Right. Just for the privilege.
Yeah, just for driving 3.5 hours. In the freezing cold to drive back 3.5 hours.
Yeah, on a dealer plate in a car you've never been in your life, and
Right.
all those variables too, right? Which I think a lot of us, like, I used to crave that excitement. It's kind of like the gamble.
It
It's
was
kinda,
cool. Don't get
Right.
me wrong. It was really cool. Once or twice, but every week, 5 times a week.
Yeah, it takes its toll. So, and then when you talk about the recon, I'm the first one to always come out and say I don't believe that we have better cars on ACV than anywhere else. It's the same mix of inventory. We have better described cars, and I know you did. I asked you to do some analysis of your reconditioning, and you did, and the data was very favorable, and we can talk about that, or if you want to. I mean,
it's pretty obvious, just from what we even talked about right now. You get a car that needs 2 new doors and a frame pulled, versus a car that needs an oil change and brake pads and a few sway bar links. The recon costs and the recon time greatly outweigh the additional shipping time. So the amount of time we have cars spent in body, the amount of time we have cars sitting on a lift, that's reduced. Shipping times increased, but the amount of time that they're not available for sale is decreased. So overall, you've got a net gain.
Yeah, and I think it's important too. Like, I'm going to harp on this a little bit here, but we don't have better quality cars. I don't believe. Maybe we do. I don't believe so. Maybe we do in the sense that ACV gets in a first crack at these cars, and the stuff that gets passed over on ACV trickles down to the auction, and that's where that lesser quality car goes. But I still believe at this point, we're so small that's kind of a micro factor. Maybe it's becoming something.
I'd say that because of who the online auctions are sourcing their cars from, they have better quality. Because you look at a sale, you have 20% of your cars coming from new car franchises, 80% coming from Joe Schmo's Auto Shack. Where
that's fair.
He's bought this car from Jose's Auto Shack, who bought it from XYZ Motors Auto Shack.
Right. And they all passed on it and didn't retail it for a reason.
Right.
No, there's a lot of validity to that. That definitely could be. That's a different wrinkle in it than I've ever thought about. Where I feel pretty safe saying is that when I look back at my own, results of buying thousands of cars, my recon was pretty consistent on 9 out of 10 cars or 8 out of 10 cars. And then it was the 1 or 2 where I really missed something. And I can attribute those misses back to those auction dynamics where I was screwed
Frazzled.
from the start, right? Frazzled, can't get around the car. It was a shady dealer that I bought it from, things that were outside of my control, right? And I believe with ACV and our consistent approach, if your average recon is $1,500, then your average recon on ACV is probably going to be about $1,500. But like, if you buy from physical auctions, you're going to have 1 or 2 out of 10 that are going to be $3,000 or $4,000, and those are the ones that throw off your averages. And with ACV, I think we protect you, not perfectly, but we protect you better from falling into those traps.
Yeah, you're in an industry where it's a game. If you can't take a loss, if you can't say, well, I should have known, then you shouldn't be in this.
Yep.
So you're always going to have those cars that it's like, man, it's this, and then it's this, and then it's this. And you're always going to have higher recon. But like you said, 9 out of 10 for us, which is, stellar considering we only had 6 out of 10 that were good cars.
Yeah.
Now we're up to 9 out of 10 that are good cars. So,
yep.
For us, that's a huge improvement.
Oh, yeah.
So
for anybody, that would be.
Our recon list, our average days to fully fix a car, oil changes, brakes, engines, everything, our average time that a car spent on the recon list was about 30 days, which is astronomical.
Yeah, that's way high. Yep.
Now we're at 14.
From date of acquisition to on the lot is 14?
So from the moment it goes through our recon process.
Okay.
So it hits the lot and we have 48 hours to get it inspected.
Yep.
So after those 48 hours, if it needs brakes or it needs rotors or it needs sway bar links or it needs, diagnosed for an airbag light, whatever, all these cars are sellable. And we sell most of them without even doing some of the fixes. We just promise the customer, hey, this car's scheduled for a brake change. Why don't you bring it in next week? We'll fix it for you.
Gotcha. That's something you can do in this state. You can't do in,
right,
in every state, but I get it.
Exactly. And it was just so much easier for us, too, because we know we don't have any major issues. We've got no major issues. It's maintenance.
Right.
So that was a huge kind of like, for us, I'm not worried about this guy going out or this buyer going out and buying a car and, man, it needs a motor. Now we're, sourcing a motor, shipping it, and, installing it. Oh, it's a bad motor. Go get another one.
Yeah, been there. Primarily with transmissions, but yep. I mean, this is
Everything comes in cycles. Now it's the motorcycle.
Of course, yeah, 3 in a row, and yep. No, absolutely. This is awesome. This is great. And I remember when we, started our dialogue probably less than a year ago, and you weren't buying anything on ACV.
I didn't like ACV.
Didn't even like ACV. So look how far we've come. I think one of the things that's the most exciting to me about our business, about ACV, is just that we can't fake it. It's results based. Like, it's success based. I can't hook you into giving us, a subscription fee every month and lock you into a contract to keep you doing business with us. I mean, there's clearly, it's your own motives that keep you coming back to ACV every day, now having 2 or 3 full-time guys buying on ACV every day, and it's moving the needle in your business, which is, that's good for everybody.
It is, and especially with, margin compressions, everyone feels it.
Mm-hmm.
Cars are becoming a commodity.
Yep.
Even more than they ever were.
Yep.
So now you're competing with not only the people on your street, not only the people in your town, but the people in your state and the people in, the country.
Right.
And so with that much more competition, your price has to be razor sharp.
Yeah.
That really limits your margin of error. And with us having more access, more transparency, we're able to still be profitable at even a reduced margin.
You're hearing it right from the source. So, yeah, makes all the sense in the world to me. I'm just happy to see that you've embraced it to the degree that you have, and that it's working for your business, and if it weren't, you got the choice to walk away or shift focus or, have them spend more time on other online auctions.
Right,
but clearly their energy is flowing, or their attention is going to where it's yielding the biggest ROI. And that being baked into their pay plan is...
Yeah, their only concern is, how do I generate the most profit?
Yeah.
And they have access to any auction out there. They can go on Simulcast. I taught them how to use it. They can go on OVE. They can go to any other auction source they want. It's just, how do you generate the most profit? So they're naturally drawn to whichever source provides the highest profitability.
Yeah, fascinating. Huh? I'm so glad it's working.
Me too.
And if it weren't, I think you're clearly a pioneer with this stuff. You're clearly on the leading edge of using tech in your dealership and harnessing the power that it has. If there were a better way, you would be onto that already too, right? Or you'd always be looking, and you should, right? Yeah, right. I think so. Yeah. If we could spend, and I know I'm beating this to death a little bit here, but if we could spend 3 to 5 minutes and just, if you could give, 5 to 10 bullet points about how maybe you made that transition. And I know it's already in here, but I just want this as a standalone thing, right? So, if I could hand deliver this to the next used car manager at a the next Ford store I walk into and say, here's how you go online, and here's how you start buying in volume on ACV. One guy, give it a couple months to get off the ground. He can be buying 30 to 50 cars a month. It'll transform your business, blah, 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 right? But I got to make that case to say, hey, invest in a couple dual screen monitors and take this new rookie salesman who's getting no ups on the floor anyways, and he's got an aptitude for tech and cars. And why don't you try giving him a shot at being a buyer? What would that look like? The first couple steps to just make that transition.
So I always look for people who, like I said, are tech savvy. They're patient. They're really diligent, detail oriented. We took some of the guys that we had who, they'd be in the CRM, and each customer would have, half a page of notes. They couldn't sell anything. They'd have half a page of notes, and they were detailed. They knew who the customer was. They did good discovery. You take that kind of guy who really isn't a true salesman, you put them in a room with a computer, which is all I want to do anyways, and you tell them, find me a car that I can sell cheaper than my competitor and still make at least $2,000 on. Go. I mean, it literally takes no time. It is the easiest thing in the world to look at your comps. You can even pull it up on cars.com. Go on cars.com. If you're bidding on a 2015 Subaru WRX, see how much the 2015 Subaru WRXs are selling for. Find the cheapest one, and if you were to price it $100 cheaper, what would you have to buy it for? Back it up. The guy you've got, you can probably use a calculator, He's detail-oriented enough to check the pictures. If you tell him each panel to repaint costs $150, he can do the math. And then you tell him, listen, I'm not paying you a single dollar for buying cars, but as soon as they sell, I'll pay you up to $200, depending on how much profit you generate. And guess what? That is going to be the most motivated person in your entire building, and they will sit there for 15 hours a day, 12 days a week, buying cars.
Yeah, I mean, these guys told me they're here 6 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like they're here because they want to be here 6 days a week.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and, they're still hanging out, chilling. Hey, I got a few more ifs working. I'll close up for you, cool, later, And sometimes I'll be walking out here at 6:30, and I'll just hear yelling and screaming coming out of them, like, what's going on? He's like, I got 2 seconds left, trying to win that one car. And it's just exciting, too. You walk in there, everyone's having fun, having a good time, and they're making money doing it.
Yeah.
And that's all. I mean, that's really, there's no 10 bullet points. There's no, secret formula. You just find some people who you like. You show them what you do, and then you just let them do it. It's not rocket science.
Did you have like limits on them? Did you tell them, hey, only buy one car? You kind of cut them loose, huh?
Because remember, it's all driven off ROI.
Yeah.
So if, like I said, hey, you've got $100,000 to start out with. Well, in the back of your head, if I got $100,000, I really need to buy at least like 15 cars. Do the math. If I've got 15 cars in inventory, we're selling 50%. That means I can sell 7 this month. Great. That means I make X amount of dollars. So I'm going to maximize every single purchase. If you got a stupid guy sitting there who's like, ooh, that's a nice truck for $40,000, at the end of the month, he sold 0. So guess who's leaving the dealership?
Makes sense.
Yeah. That guy. If it's all driven off sales data, your buyers are going to buy the right inventory.
Yeah.
Because that's all they're paid on. They don't get paid on buying cars. They only get paid on them selling.
Yeah. Which they've got to just trust the process, right? They got to trust that you're going to get them through recon. They got to trust that your sales team's going to do a good job. Your marketing, online efforts are going to drive the customer traffic in and get them sold. But they don't have to worry about that either.
They don't. And the thing is, too, they don't even have to worry about our advertising. Their pricing drives the customer in.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Right? So we don't have to advertise their cars. We put them up on cars.com, Auto Trader, Car Gurus, whatever, and then 50,000 leads later, it's sold.
Yeah, right. But it all starts with
the right car.
The right car and the profits in the buy, right? Mm-hmm. And because they're looking at more cars than the competition, they're making smarter buys, right? They're passing on ones and they're engaging on other ones that make more sense for your specific business. Mm-hmm. And I don't, I looked at what you price your cars for anecdotally, but it's not like you're, these are not all bad Carfax cars that you're selling at steep discounts.
No.
You get full retail on these cars. You're not giving them away. They're priced right.
You buy clean cars, good history.
Yep.
You price them cheap. You don't sell a 50,000 mile Impala for cheaper than a 150,000 mile Impala, but you don't sell it for more money than a $30,000 or a 30,000 mile Impala.
Right. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. But again, it's not like there's rocket science here. You took smart, capable young talent who didn't have a bunch of bad habits, and you said, basically what's my downside here? I have a couple guys in for, and if you started with one, and if 3 months went by and it was a total failure, you would have canned the effort.
Well, of course.
So it's like, well, where's the risk here?
Not much.
Right. Considering how expensive it is to run a dealership, and all the other things we try, you know, and
Right.
all the other lead gen things that we're promised that are going to sell more cars, and everything is at least 4 figures to even.
Oh yeah. To even start,
Right.
4 figures is your what's the word? Your setup fee.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah, I about fell over my chair when I wanted to go and transition to a DMS. But yeah,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, no, that's awesome, man. I mean, I got everything and more that I wanted to extract from this conversation. If there's anything that, you know, last minute stuff that you want to share.
I think we got it all out.
Okay, good stuff. Well, I thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for being an awesome customer and being willing to share all this information, because it's, look, the more dealers that we have that embrace this and get on board, it's hard enough being a car dealer. All we're trying to do is help the marketplace and help everybody. You know, the fees are less. You know, we eliminate. I think we eliminate a lot of wasted time and energy. Keep you closer to your business. It's all the stuff you talked about. But I'd like to think that we're, you know, a partner to these dealerships.
Absolutely.
Well, glad to be your partner.
We appreciate it. Thank
Awesome.
you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Guys, Eugene from Indy Auto Man. Awesome stuff. Thank you.